Hello YouTube, this is Luantha aka Lancet634 and we're doing Teamfight Tactics patch 918 as you can see on the screen here. Caveat, I don't really pay attention to surrender at 20 or to the PBE environment, so I don't really see these notes until they come out. So this is kind of my first take at them. I kind of see some things from Riot Mort. Mort posts a lot of things on Twitter. I tend to follow him on that, but we'll see what we got here. It's been 2 weeks since they did a patch. They skipped last week because they were trying to make this as good of a drop as possible, because I believe there's a new item in here. But let's just scroll on into this and see what we got. Yeah, just a lot of changes. So we got the new mystery box system. So boxes are going to be common, uncommon, rare, and they have different items in them depending on their rarity. And then so every player should get the same number of boxes and the same number of item components in a single game. That's pretty good. Take away the biggest RNG that can hinder you. Nico's Help. So Nico's Help is a new item. Note it's an item. If you play other auto battlers, you note that you've already heard of Nico's Help from other auto battlers, where it's another champion, and you buy the champion for 5 gold, and you'll use it, and it counts as whatever unit you need. Well, Nico's Help is instead an item that creates a 1-star copy of that champion. So as long as you have it on the bench, like you can have a Yasuo, you can make another Yasuo with it, so you get 2-star Yasuo faster, or even push for that 3-star. Note on that, I saw Riot Mort discuss this, is that it does pull from the available pool of champions. Remember, there's only so many champions in the game. You can't go over that. If there is no more available in the pool, when you activate Nico's Help, it'll actually bounce. So it will not just make sure there's one there for you. If all of the veins are pulled out of the game and you try to make a 3-star vein by using Nico's Help, it's going to bounce and you won't be able to use it. So that's just something to note. I mean, you can try it the next round even, because someone might sell one and then you can get it from that. But just so you're aware of that, Nico's Help does not just pull, just doesn't recreate one out of thin air. It does pull from that pool. Some system changes. Since there's so much gold in the game right now, they're changing how much EXP it takes to level up. These are minor changes. It's kind of just to bring the gold totals down a little bit and make it a little harder to push for that level, but I don't foresee this being too big of a change. It does shift how you want to level as you get further into the game, but overall this isn't too much. Champion tier drop rates, so they're going to be pushing for a more distinct early game, mid game, late game, it seems. Yeah. So you're going to be able to get tier 5's higher chance at level 9, which is good, because even 10% was a little low. 12%, that's pretty good now. And they pulled it out of the 3-star pool. And even level 3, you have a higher chance of 1-stars still and less 2-stars. So at level 3, you're going to be able to get those 1-stars, and in theory, you'll get a tier 3 1-star easier, and it will require way less resources. Of course, all the levels in between aren't any different. So, but I like how they're trying to shift a early, mid, late game into the game, because they kind of bleed together, and early game kind of doesn't exist too much right now. Champion pool sizes, so this is what we were talking about earlier. Champions have so many in the game. So now tier 3 champions, there's only 18 of them in the game from 21. So that's one less 2-star tier 3 champion. That's pretty big news, because it does take 9 to get a tier 3, 3-star tier 3 champion. So this is going to make that a little harder, which I think is good, because I've seen a lot of high tier 3 star units, and this will probably it's going to push that away, because it's just you're contesting the same champions, and it's going to be just so much harder. Item stacking and clarity. So these items listed, which are Ghost Blade, Knight's Vow, Frozen Mallet, Yumi, Darken, Blade of the Rune King, Phantom Dancer, Morellonomicon, and Red Buff, all do not stack, and they should bounce off now, and they should say that they're unique, and they should be labeled as such. That's good. That's good for that. Good on them to post the clarity of that. I did also see another thing from Mortdog. GA isn't on this list, and that's intended. GA, if you stack it, you get an extra 500 health upon reviving. So it doesn't give you extra lives. It means instead of reviving at 500 health the first time, for that one time, you're reviving at 1,000 or at 1,500. So I don't recommend ever stacking GAs on a unit. But it does stack, and that's intended. For better or for worse, probably for worse. New traits. So they added new 9-piece bonuses. Assassin 9-piece now grants more crit damage, and of course they added that crit chance last patch. It's 40% crit chance if you have 9 assassins. That's pretty nutty. Which means your crit chance is actually 65% if you think about it, because you always have base 25. Sork 9-piece grants 175% of spell power, and that's to all units. That's a lot of spell power, and you'll be one-shotting people. But again, it's 9 sorcerers, hard to pull off because there's no front line. That's why most people typically go 3 sorcerers with like Elementalist in there, because then the brand ult gets the Sork buff. Wild 4 is going to be getting just a straight buff. All the attacks now can't miss. It's just straight an add-on buff. So basically, Wild hard counters Yordle. I like the change, and note this gives it to all allies, so it's a good tech in for late game now. Doesn't have just no use. Some trait adjustments. Elementalists Golem has double the armor now. Pretty good. It was really squishy earlier. Knight damage reduction is going to be increased in the mid to late, which is pretty good. I don't really see Knights go mid to late, so I think that's a solid buff. And then the Assassin jump delay is going to be increased a little bit, so it's going to give more of a chance for an opening in the backline to occur. That's scary because Assassins got buffed last patch too, and that's a really good buff in getting units to pull out of their formation. Champion-wise, Tier 1, Camille's got an attack damage buff of +5, 50 to 55. At least Spiderlings, just the Spiderlings, have 10 more AD from 50 to 60. Graves' armor up 10 from 20 to 30. Cassidy attack damage down 5 from 55 to 50. And Kha'Zix's starting total mana is now, instead of 0 and 50, it's now 0 and 65. So Kha'Zix, again with the nerf, can't spam Q like he wants to, and running Seraphs, I mean, doesn't give him as much of a return on investment as it used to. Interesting change on the Kha'Zix. I mean, overall, it's the champions that kind of need the help, I think. I thought at least we'd get more than that, but overall, nothing too Starling. Pike's starting mana down 25 for Tier 2 champions. TF's health down is up 50. Excuse me, up 50. That's good. And TF blue card mana now gives 10 more mana at rank 1, 15 more at 2, and 20 more at 3. And if you have a Tier 3 TF, something may be wrong with you. But getting 30 mana from a Tier 1 TF getting a blue card, that's pretty good. And the extra health, you should get one off more reliably, at least a card in general. Pretty good buff there, and that's both pirates getting buffed, so keep an eye out on pirates. Tier 3, Eve getting hit with the nerfs. She was very strong in Korea, and especially in high elo. She's been getting played as a carry because her execute threshold was so high. Now it's down to 50%. I thought this change would happen when she started showing a lot of strength, and I guess I was right. I'm also surprised, though, that they hit the multiplier. It's now 345 instead of 357. So not only is the threshold lowered, but the multiplier is lowered too. Really, if you have a Tier 2 Eve, though, that multiplier should be one-shotting a 50% health unit unless it's a tank. So, whatever. But still, the lower threshold is the big note here, because 2/3 health targets getting one shot was just really dumb. And another big change here is Katarina's mana to ult is now 85. So she used to be 0 100. So she started with 0, needed 100 to ult. Now she still starts with 0, but it takes 85 to ult. That's a really good change for her, and hopefully we see a little more Katarina play and Katarina carries, because Katarina can do some really nutty things. Tier 4 Akali's ability damage is getting buffed. 50 damage at a Tier 1 Akali, a 75 damage buff at Tier 2, and a 100 damage buff at Tier 3. I felt like Akali was already in a strong spot, and this is just going to further help her. And again, it's another assassin buff. It kind of makes up for the Eve nerf, but there's also a Katarina buff in there, and Pike buff. Well, no, that's a Pike nerf. But there's a lot of power getting put back into assassins, so maybe Ninja Assassin starts taking off more again. Tier 5, Anivia ability duration is now over 6 seconds versus 8, so she has more damage per tick now. It's 800 damage still for both, but instead of 100 damage per second per se, it's 125 damage per second. So that's something to keep in mind, because that's a lot more. Well, it's a little less than 125, but it's still an increase in damage per second, which is pretty good. And then, of course, Pantheon getting smacked with a health and attack damage nerf. From 1,000 health, he's now 850 at Tier 1, and his base and his attack damage goes from 80 to 75. Both good changes. I still think Pantheon's super viable, super good. And this is after they hard nerfed him in the hot nerf they pushed out last week. Literally within 48 hours of dropping him, they hot nerfed him to not being like literally rush to get a Pantheon and just go nuts. Item changes. BF Sword now only gives 15 attack damage from 20. That's an interesting change. Didn't think BF Sword was that big of a problem. Frozen Heart debuff duration is now 4 seconds, which is up from 2.875. Who the in Riot decided that was a good number? I don't know. I'm glad it's 4 seconds now. For Locket of the Iron Solari is up to 300 shield for 7 seconds. Used to be 250 for 6, so that's a little bit better. It's better early for sure, and it's going to be a little better later. Swordbreaker chance to disarm is up from 25% to 33%, but it only lasts for 3 seconds, where it used to last for 4. So it's, it's roughly the same. It's just a higher chance of proccing for a less duration. Super good late game. Big buff to gunslingers. And maybe Jinx starts liking it too, because I love Swordbreaker, but Hush is just as good. Zephyr, the banish duration's now up a second, so it's now 6 seconds instead of 5. Supposedly stacking Zephyrs does something too. Not sure what it does, but I've heard rumors. And then of course bug fixes. Big thing on here, Zeke's Herald and Locket of the Iron Solari no longer give their buffs to the enemy team when they're re-enabled after a Hex Tech disable. That's a huge thing. That felt horrible when that worked that way. If Void 3's active Kha'Zix's ability now always deals true damage, that's part of why they nerfed how often he gets to ult. Is because it wasn't always doing true damage with Void. Now it does. Luden's Echo now properly hits the main target of an ability. And then a slew of Camille ability changes. Frozen Mallet changes. Darken change. And these are just all tooltip updates. These aren't actual changes. They're just pure bug fixes in the tooltip state. So that's accurately reflecting what was already live. Brand's ult was bouncing 2 more times than intended, so now it bounces the appropriate number of times. That's actually a Brand nerf. Interesting stuff. But again, these are just bug fixes, not actual buffs or nerfs. Not design buffs or nerfs, but that Brand change is a nerf. And then, of course, if you haven't seen, they recorded new music for TFT. So now there's going to be early, mid, and late game music. So early game music is going to be when everyone's alive until someone gets knocked out. And then mid game music is 7 players to when there's 3 left. 3 left, it transitions to the final chapter that they're calling it, and that goes until the end of the game. But that's the battle music, and then when you're shopping, it's a more calmer music. I'm pretty excited for that. Music's a very big thing with League. They've always done a good job, so I'm very excited. And that's it for patch 9.18 for TFT. A lot of big changes here. It doesn't look like the Thief's Gloves made it in here for the items. I'm guessing that's 9.19. And again, 9.19 is when they're going to be fixing the matchmaking in games where you're going AB, AB, AB against the opponents. So that'll get fixed next patch. And again, that's in 2 weeks. So look for that. And let me know what you guys think on this. Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And I'll catch you guys next patch.